those of you online. Is the live stream on? Can we start live stream? Thank you. So the meeting will be live streamed for public viewing and will be uploaded after the meeting together with the decision sheet showing the decisions taken at the meeting. Press and public will be asked to leave the proceedings after the public business if there's any requirement to consider the exempt appendices. Okay. Are there any apologies for absence? I've had kept from Deputy Mayor Brownell.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any urgent business. Are there any declarations of interest from members? Councillor Kennedy.
For item 7, Chair, I should just make it clear that I am chair of the Tobacco Control Alliance in Hackney.
Okay, that makes sensible. In relation to your portfolio. Okay then, so that brings us to notice of intention to conduct business in private. Haven't received any other. The occasion may arise depending on which, if we want to look at any exempt appendices. Deputations. I've had a question from Councillor Zoe Garber in relation to item 9, which was actually addressed to Councillor Mackenzie, and I understand it will be responded to in writing. That's all right. Thank you. So that brings us then to item 6, the unrestricted minutes of the meeting, the last meeting of the Cabinet, the Procurement Committee, which was held on 7th of November. All right.
Yeah.
Are we happy to? Sorry, I won't go through them. But any observations?
Yeah.
Can we agree those as a true record then?
Agreed.
Okay, which brings us to item 7 then, the Stop Smoking Service 1-year contract extension, and I think we've got Lola Alawoli and Suhana Begum to introduce it. So whoever's going to introduce it, welcome both of you, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Lola Olawole, and I'm here to. We're here to bring a report to ask for the extension of the City and Hackney Stop Smoking Unit Service. We're asking for an extension up until the 30th of June 2024. This 1-year extension would ensure a continuity of the service for City and Hackney residents while a full recommissioning process is undertaken. The recommissioning will involve a full evidence review and service redesign, and it is very important that we leave enough time for these steps to be undertaken fully to ensure that the new Stop Smoking best meets the needs of the residents. The reason we're bringing this extension was there was a delay in recommissioning activities. There was a delay due to COVID, and the proposed extension would make the end of the current service align with the planned launch of the new service, ensuring a smooth continuation of support to residents. Our public health service played a vital role in Hackney during the COVID. There was a lot of staff time and resources that was committed to it. And that meant that some of the recommissioning activities were delayed, and the Stop Smoking Service is one of those activities. And I feel that at this point now, we're getting to the point where recommissioning activities are now beginning, they're now on track. However, there is not a sufficient time for a full service redesign to take place to ensure a full redesign to take place, because this contract is going to come to an end in June 2023. So we have considered a few options. What's going to be the best option? The extension we're asking for is for 1 year, and is for a maximum value of 924K, just a little bit over 924K. And during this time, we're going to, for the recommissioning process, we're going to carry out a full review and a full redesign service. The extension period also will give us enough time to do a wider review of the tobacco control strategy and to allow that to be completed it will give us time as well to have a resident and stakeholder engagement, which will be carried out in order to ensure the redesign of the service. During the extension period as well, we're going to do a service specification will be completed. The business case will be developed and approved. The tender will be published. We're going to have a contract award and then also a mobilization period. So this extension really would also ensure a continuation of the current service. So there were different options that was considered just to be able to see which one was going to be the best one. The first one was option 1 was to allow the service to come to an end in June 2023. But this would negatively impact the health of the City and Hackney residents. We also considered maybe to procure a new service via open procurement, but doing this means that there's not going to be sufficient time to fully redesign the service, taking into consideration things like benchmarking and also clinical governance. One of the options that was also considered was insourcing, but again, there's just not enough time to be able to look at the services in-house to see if we can bring this back in-house. However, when we are doing the recommissioning process, which will start in July, we hope to we will consider insourcing as one of the options. We'll be able to consider that in depth. And then the last option that we looked at is obviously the extension of the service, extending the service for 1 year. And like I said, this will give us enough time to be able to redesign the service, to be able to look at service specification, to be able to look at market engagement. So we feel that option 4, extending the service for the continuation, extending the contract for the continuation of the service for residents is the preferred option, because this will give us time to sort of fully redesign the service, while also we have the opportunity to continue the current service. And I just also want to just mention an update in regards to paragraph 11.2, which talks about agenda for change. And just to say that since the report was submitted to City and London DLT, that funding for agenda for change will now be paid via the ICB, and this has now been confirmed. So the second half of that paragraph no longer applies.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members? Councillor Kennedy?
I just wanted to comment, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm chair of the Tobacco Control Alliance in Hackney, but we have a very good relationship and good results from the current provider. I don't see any danger in extending fee for a year. Lola's outlined very well the work that still needs to be done. The London Tobacco Control Alliance has just launched. We're heavily involved with that. And just a reminder to ourselves, we have a manifesto commitment that we were elected on as an administration to work towards a smoke-free Hackney for 2030, which means only 5% of our population are smokers. So I think it's 14% at the moment. So that's a hard, no, it's 11% at the moment. Is that right? Yes, sorry, I read James' lips very well there. Thank you, James. But that's still a tough target to meet, and I'm convinced that actually this 1 year extension is the best way of helping us get there. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions, Lawrence?
No, only what steps would be taken if we were going to look at insourcing more seriously in July? How would that actually, if we're happy with that provider, I'll obviously absolutely welcome this work. Don't want to delay it, but how would we proceed?
Do you want me to come in?
Yes, could you respond, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would be looking at that as just part of all of the different options for commission. So it would be whether we did it in-house or commissioned an external provider. So it was it would just be done as part of that, as one of our options. So we would design the service in the same way. We'd want to co-design the service to make sure it meets the needs of the remaining smokers in Hackney and the city, but then the actual model for delivering that will be based on the sort of like the feedback and the engagement work that we do, and what is the best option for delivering an evidence-based and effective service. So it would just be one of the options. It wouldn't hold things up. It would be part of the process.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, well, I don't think I have any problem approving the report, but I had a question. In 516, you say with excellent working relationship with the existing provider, but in the section with the KPIs, there's no indication of the actual performance of the provider at the moment. I wonder if you just say a few words to reassure us that we're, without the actual evidence there, that we're in good hands.
So Hannah, did you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So I think, we've got really good, as it says.
I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
Sorry, let me just move. Can you hear me now? Is that a bit better?
Better.
Okay, great. Yeah, just to say we have got a really excellent relationship with our provider, and I think they have, throughout sort of the COVID period, they have consistently met their targets in terms of service delivery. And they have actually kept the service going throughout COVID, which I think is, a really important consideration. They have changed the way that they've delivered. So they have moved to sort of a bit more of a telephone model, and then moving towards a hybrid model now. But they have delivered well throughout COVID.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, if we can then agree the recommendations as set out in section 3.
Agreed.
Okay, and thank you very much to the officers, and our support, best wishes for this important work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Agenda item 8, Young People's Clinical Health and Wellbeing Service. And again, I think Lola Olawale is going to introduce this report, if that's correct.
Yes, thank you. So we're here to bring the report to ask for the extension of the City and Hackney Chips Plus service for 1 year until the 31st of August 2024. Again, this is another one of our services which was due to delays because of staff time and resources committed to COVID. This 1 year will enable the continuation of the vital service for the City and Hackney residents, and will allow for a full recommissioning process to be undertaken. The CHIPS Plus is a children-centered clinical and treatment service delivered out of 6 main sites for children and young people aged 11 to 19 and up to 25 for young people that are particularly vulnerable to poorer health outcomes such as homelessness. The service provides access to a range of services like stop smoking, screening, treatment of sexual transmission infection, access to contraception, pregnancy testing, and advice and support. We are asking for a 1 year extension to enable the procurement of the service, which will support the wider comprehensive review and redesign, and will also allow the service to form part of an integration into the Super Youth Hub. So the value of the extension is just over 540K. And in terms of when we do, during the 1 year period, there will be, the current service will be reviewed, stakeholder engagement will be carried out in order to redesign the service. It will allow time for us to look in depth into things like insourcing, and also it will allow time for integration into the project of the Super Youth Hub. So again, we considered 4 options. And the first one was to allow the service to come to an end. But again, if that happens, there will be no access to essential services to City and Hackney young people. and this would cause a negative impact to population health and well-being. We also considered procuring a new service via open procurement, but the service is going to come to an end on the 31st of August 23, and there is just not sufficient time or resources and capacity to carry out a full redesign of the service. Insourcing, we also considered insourcing. We feel that this is not there is not sufficient time to do this and to develop the capacity in-house. However, for the recommissioning process, we will definitely look at insourcing in depth. And then the next option, which is our preferred option, is an extension for 1 year to allow for a comprehensive service redesign to be carried out without disrupting the current service.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions or comments, Councillor Woodley?
I mean, a comment really, there's obviously a lot of moving parts at the moment in terms of integration with health. So I suppose I just want some assurance around that work in terms of 6.2.2 and the integration with the Super Youth Hubs project. I'm conscious also that there has been some desire to see some improvement within this service, and that there have been some assurances around that have been shared with us prior to this meeting, which has been welcome. But I don't know if you want to comment on those improvements and take that opportunity to comment on those here.
Any other questions? Okay, if someone wants to respond to that.
I'm happy to respond, Chair. So I'm a Carolyn Sharp, I'm consultant in public health for children and young people. So on the Super Youth Hub integration point, absolutely, we're doing our best to make sure the timelines align. So the public health team are really involved in the planning for the Super Youth Hub work. We have, great visions for an integrated one-stop shop for all children and young people's needs, in order to, obviously, we'll have economies of scale that way, but essentially it's just going to result in better outcomes for children, for young people. And so the extension will mean that the timelines for the CHIPS Plus recommission will align with the timelines for that Super Youth Hub. I mean, we can't guarantee it will all work out, but we're obviously monitoring that very closely and working very hard to make sure it does. And I think this provides a great opportunity to get that CHIPS Plus service into that wider integration agenda. So that's on that point. And then, yes, on the performance point, we wanted to be open and honest around the current performance issues of the service. So it hasn't been performing as we would want it to, and we have been taking measures to address that. So an informal letter was sent to the service provider outlining the elements of the poor performance. One of the big ones is around access. So footfall through the service, essentially, that dropped off substantially over COVID, and it hasn't recovered, or it hadn't recovered, however, but the service has been taking measures to make some improvements. So they've completely changed their leadership and governance. They've brought in a new, very experienced sexual health consultant, and they've managed to recruit to some vacancies that have been there for quite a while, and that has started to result in some positive indications around the performance. So footfall is starting to increase now, and we're seeing some better results around some of the key performance indicators. We're not all the way there. There is still some work to do with the provider, in particular around increasing access to the service from all parts of the borough, and obviously thinking about those groups that we want to target. I think currently the service isn't reaching or engaging new service users as well as it needs to, but the provider has developed a comms plan and an outreach and engagement plan to get out and outreach to young people who should be accessing the service. So we intend to work very closely with the provider to ensure that performance improves.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd just draw your attention to the KPI table, and I just make the same point I made last time, that it was helpful when we've got existing contracts to know what the performance is. But I know that you've made some comments on that during your introduction, so yeah, just make that note from the future. And obviously to just stress again, as we did before, that where there are possibilities of insourcing, it's something the council is very interested in pursuing, and we look forward to see how you get on with that when you come back next time. Are there any other comments or questions from members? Can we thank the officers then and agree the recommendations are set out?
Yeah,
Agreed.
Great. Thank you very much. Which brings us then to item 9, communal heating systems contract award, and I think Sinead Burke and Rob Jack are available virtually to present this. So is it Sinead? Always get this wrong.
No, that's correct. Okay.
Hello?
Hi, apologies, I'm here. I'm just moving room. Sorry, I thought we had another one to go.
Okay, great.
Sorry, 1 second till I just move upstairs. I was supervising a small person. Right, I'm here. So,
Great.
Rob is on the meeting as well. So my name is Sinead Burke, the head of property and asset management, and Rob Jack is here. He's the M&E manager. And the report we have this evening, which I'll just give you a brief overview of, is a contract award report for a capital works contract for communal heating systems. So this is a contract that would cover any capital works on any of our communal heating systems. And we have defined quite a broad range of what that work is. Traditionally, you might think of it as a lot of what Rob's team has done is replacing the plant room, replacing a lot of the key parts. But it also could be capital repairs, which is just smaller items of work arising. But in the future also, we see it being related to improvement of the pipework infrastructure, in particular to improve the efficiency of the systems, and in the longer term also replacement of some of the gas boilers with alternative fuel technologies, perhaps heat pumps, etc. And so the contract covers any or all capital investment in the systems, including potentially decommissioning of systems. We might decide that a system that we have in place at the moment is best, that the block is best served by individual heating systems, or alternatively the creation of a new communal heating system. So for whatever reason, we may also decide that a block is best served by a communal system. An example might be if we wanted to take gas out of a building, for example. So the scope of the contract technically covers the whole Hackney Council housing. This is a contract award report with a recommendation to award the contract to a single tenderer for up to 10 years, an initial 5-year term, and up to 5 one-year extensions to a value of 20 million pounds. So this follows a business case report that was done in 2019. And the procurement in the interim was delayed by, we had all sorts of upsets in our work programs due to COVID, as did many people, and to the cyber attack, which diverted a lot of the team's attention to more urgent pressing matters. But having overcome those largely, the team went out to tender with this in March earlier this year. We've done a 2-stage tender procedure. Section 8 of the report summarises the number of returns with a good level of interest from the market. So we had 47 generally interested, but 15 passing the initial minimum standards for the SQ stage. And we went on to brought 4 of the best ones through to the ITT stage, and we have a contract award report appended to this, which is an exempt report from publication, and we're recommending bidder A to be awarded the contract. The report sets out some of the details about the marking and how the various cost and quality ratios, the mark, so it was a 50-50 cost quality scoring. And it also sets out some of the contract management arrangements, which I don't know if I need to present in detail now and some of the KPIs that we're going to use. I think the key thing to draw attention to in terms of KPI and the contract management is that we have set up that it is an initial 5-year term, and to ensure that the KPIs are valuable to the term, and also to ensure performance throughout the term. Because one of the risks you have when you let an initial 5-year contract is you think, well, the contractor will, you know, be a bit lazy for the first few years, and then suddenly, you know, be all kind of smiles and fantastic for the last year in order to get the extension. We've set up a provision within the contract that each year of the 5-year term, performance in each year is required in order to get each year's extension. So if they perform well for only 3 of the 5 years of that initial contract, they only get 3-year extension. So that's there as a kind of a key contract mechanism to incentivize good performance against these KPIs throughout the duration of the first 5-year term, and then that informs the extensions that would be available. The management of the contract would be via Rob and his team. So we have in-house project managers, service managers, and we've in-house clerk of works as well, and a customer relationship officer to handle liaison with the residents on this. And so we also have the comments as required of procurement, legal, etc. Is that enough of a summary, or would you like to present any more detail on any of the other aspects?
I think we're all right, probably.
Yeah,
we just move to questions for members. Would that be helpful? Yes. Thank you very much for that. So, Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. Firstly, on the KPIs informing the 5-year, the 5 extra years, they will inform them, but they don't guarantee them, do they? I just want to check that, because it may be at the end of 5 years, even after 5 years good performance, that we actually might want to look somewhere else. Or so are we effectively approving a 10-year contract if they meet their KPIs? That's my question. Sorry, I've turned it into a question. My second question is, are they responsible for, in any way, for the negotiation with leaseholders? Because at page 48, you point out that a lot of the work they will be doing requires significant recharges. And my final question is, could you tell us a little bit more about e-auctions? Because we did an e-auction for social value, didn't we?
Yes.
And I wondered if the reason that there was a very close between bidder 3 and bidder 1, and was it because the auction had driven them to try and outdo each other on social value? And is that a good thing? Or is there a risk if no one else is trying to outbid someone on social value, you don't get as good a social value offer? Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to deal with those? Because there's quite a bit there, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, yeah, I was assuming I'd come to those questions, right? So the first one on the term, I would actually probably need to look at the real detail of the contract to ensure that I have your question correct. But my understanding is that the performance against the KPIs awards them an additional term, so that yes, you are being asked to approve up to a 10-year contract. There are sometimes provisions that we write into the contract to allow us to not award those in the client's exceptional circumstances. I can't remember if we wrote sort of mechanisms in to allow that. I don't think so. I think once they perform, and there's a defined mechanism, by the way, so they have, I think it's 12 KPIs. They have red, amber, green performance levels. So green is above the target that we want to see. Amber is like close to it, but not quite, and red is bad. And we obviously have a target that they have to have at least X number of green ones, and we don't permit 2 or 3 key ones are going to health safety to even be amber. So there's a specific mechanism which is in the KPI report, the detailed KPI report appendices to this, which sets out exactly what the performance is. But I'm pretty sure that they we give them the extension once they perform to that level, and the approval is for a contract up to 10 years. We don't intend to say return to CPIC for 5 years. But there's a separate question about whether we have the client in this case as we have a right to terminate this contract on a no fault basis for any reason. So there's a slight legal ifs and buts here, which I could get the detail of if I appraise the contract. So yes, the approval is up to 10 years, but the council has, I think, ways out before then, should it want to exercise that with a good performing contractor for whatever reason. The second thing is on the leaseholders. The leasehold services team will handle consultation with the leaseholders. Yes, there are some high recharges that come with some of these contracts, but it's handled internally by the leasehold services team. What we often do, though, when we have these kind of projects, during the term of the leasehold consultation, we'd often have an evening meeting. And especially on very technical contracts like that, we might ask the contractor along, because it can be helpful just to answer some of the questions that the leaseholders have. Sometimes they want to ask questions directly of the contractor. So we'll do that if it's helpful to the leaseholders, but it would be the contractor just being there to answer questions, not in any way leading the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the third one is about the e-auction. So the e-auction is this idea of we've done it on 3 electrical contracts already. So we're testing an idea which is being developed in industry. Is when you go out for auction, or tender, it's very easy to evaluate the pricing, for example. And some of the quality questions can be a little bit more difficult to evaluate, but at least you're a lot of the time comparing things that are very similar. So, for example, we would have asked a question in this tender about their experience of maybe moving to different fuel types away from gas, and you can see how you might compare different answers of different contractors, their experience level, etc. When you come to social value, it's a very broad topic, and there are lots of different ideas about what can be captured by this umbrella idea of social value. And you might get a submission where one tenderer offers to really invest in local apprentices and employment and skills and training and all this kind of wonderful stuff, but someone else comes at you with a very different idea about what social value is, which might be very premised on sustainability or environmental impacts. And it's very hard to compare those. And so what we've done is we've ran this auction where there are a number of set measures that they can offer, and they can offer different values against them. They can say, I'll offer this many apprentices and this much work around the sustainability thing, and they can see what they're kind of worth in terms of the overall bid. And it happens iteratively. So I think they go out, there's an auction during the tender process, and then they see, oh, you're in 4th place on the auction, and you can go and have another go and change your results. And you can bid a little bit more should you like. And then the company that we've employed do monitoring throughout the term to make sure that all the specific issues that they've promised, that they deliver against them. Rob, I don't know if there's anything you had observed about whether you think that they were driven to perform better on the second round of the auction, or
No, not really. Most of them stuck with the initial bids. There wasn't a lot of changing going on at all.
Okay. Does that answer those questions, or was there something else that?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're right there, okay?
Thank
you. Yeah, I was just going to point out some of you raised in report 2.3 that this contract will also enable the council to replace Clorella's existing unit with lower carbon system and contribute to the net zero strategy. And this links with Councillor Garbutt's question, which I'll forward to Councillor Mackenzie. But can you just say briefly how you see this contract as being able to facilitate, our carbon journey towards net zero?
Okay, so there's sort of 2 important parts to the work that. And Councillor Garbutt's question is actually sort of the second point that we see being slightly further into the distance, and we can answer the question when we come to it. In the past 3 or 4 years, Rob's team have been installing heat meters to the communal heating systems. We have an awful lot of them installed. We don't have them installed to all properties because for technical reasons, the layout of the pipework isn't always such that it facilitates that. But what it has allowed us to start doing now that they're in for a little bit of time, it allows us to start to measure the efficiency of the heating systems and how efficiently they're distributing the heat. And that is one of the key areas of carbon consumption that has been identified in terms of the overall, I think what they call Scope 1 carbon impacts that the council has. Because obviously the heating, there's 3,000 homes on these heating systems, and that is gas that we purchase directly. And so when there was a review done of the council's carbon emissions, the communal heating systems were quite big. And so we are primarily interested Rob's team in the distribution and making sure that they're running efficiently and that the distribution is efficient. I'm not saying we're not worried about what the residents are using, but it's for them to manage, and we have to indirectly help them to reduce their use through fabric retrofit, which is kind of outside the scope of this conversation right now. But this contract is really about saying that this communal heating systems, they should be delivering the heat as efficiently as possible. So we've started to measure that. And in the first few years of the contract in particular, we think that there is quite a bit of work we can do to, first of all, complete some heat meters where we don't have them yet, to complete the analysis. And secondly, we think that when we start looking into this, you'll see that there are distributions of pipe runs which are perhaps much less efficient than others. And that's why I mentioned at the start, we actually do want to make sure that we can invest in the network and not just the plant room. We also have been running trials or some Rob, what would you call the analysis we've been doing where we test how optimally
We've done some optimization work.
Yeah,
on 2 systems, covering 2 blocks, one within the Shoreditch heat network and one on the gas going points, to give us an analysis back of how they're running now and what could we do to improve that without sort of carrying out major works. So we've been pointed in the direction of some repairs and replacements we could do that are quite low cost, but give you an extra 15-20% efficiency.
Exactly. So in the first part of our kind of zero carbon thing, it's actually understanding the consumption. And obviously, if there's something that you maybe have not been really measuring before, there will be parts, like Rob has said, where actually it turns out it's not about replacing the whole network. It's about this pump really isn't operating very well, and it's not particularly apparent, but they've got these little meters on them to really dig into that now, and we can try to optimize that. In the longer term, we do see that we'll need to move away from gas. It's not easy to do that immediately because for a whole pile of reasons, and Rob and his team are working on how to assess when is the best time to move away. So it's partly thinking about the system, but it's partly thinking about the building and whether the building is suitable for some of the alternative heat sources that are coming online. So, for example, heat pumps, air source heat pumps, the Regen team often put them in with their blocks, and they're great, but their blocks are very highly insulated, being built to current standards. The heat pumps tend to deliver low temperature heat, and so in some of our older blocks, which aren't as well insulated, that can feel like it's just insufficient temperature in your heating system, and obviously that's not great. And it also can be, we just need to check that they're not more expensive to run because they run on electric rather than on gas. And so we need to be sure that when we would move to these systems, that we're doing them in a way that doesn't so adversely affect people's affordability of their energy use. We need to make sure the building is able for them. We need to make sure the people in the building are ready to use that kind of system. So we have a sort of an appraisal that we've been developing to see when we would feel a block is ready to move to an alternative heat source. And so now, even when we replace even a gas boiler, we do that check. We've done a few already where we go through. We think, is there a way that we can move this over yet? And I think we've done it twice or 3 times, and we've kept with gas because it often feels at the moment like the blocks aren't really ready to move to to the lower temperatures that you get from air source. But this is a 10-year contract, and we feel very much that the technology should be moved on. The blocks should be a bit retrofitted towards the end of the sort of second part of the contract to allow that to happen. Rob, is there anything else you wanted to add on some of the air source heat pumps or any of those newer technologies?
Yeah, no, I think one of the main points, and you touched on it earlier, Sinead, was when you were saying that we would sort of have evening meetings with residents and leaseholders, and I think that's even more so when we're looking at new technologies, and it's just sort of trying to educate them along, because with the new technologies, they're so different from what we use now. As in, you switch on your thermostat now, and your radiators are really hot to touch within 10-15 minutes. A lot of new technologies, it's going to take 2 hours to get the heat to your radiator. So it's an education process, not just for Hackney residents. It's throughout the country.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? I'm just going to also note the commitment in the report to extended apprentices in 751, which is welcome, as well as don't necessarily got a question on that, but and the general approach to sustainable development in it. So thank you for that. If I could then move can I ask the committee to accept the recommendations set out? Agree the recommendation. Hang on. Go on ahead. So agree the recommendation set out.
Yes.
3. Thank you very much. Item 10 then. The award of the construction contract for the surgeries at Belfast Road and the Portico Linscott Road. So David Borrell, I think, is going to introduce something. Yeah. He's going to introduce his report, I believe, and the report is for noting, I see.
That's correct, Councillor. So as you'll be aware from previous report to CPIC, this is the construction of 2 new primary care surgeries on council-owned sites, the first of which is 228 Belfast Road in Stoke Newington, and the second is the Portico at 34 Linscott Road, just off Lower Clapton, which is a Grade 2 listed building, where we're creating 2 modern purpose-built primary care surgeries for local practices that are in considerably undersized premises at the moment, that are very dated and frankly past their useful lives. So the contracts were competitively tendered and awarded earlier this year, back in May, and we were required under the previous report to CPIC to come back to committee and update you on the award of the contract, which we're doing today. My apologies, it's taking a little longer than we'd hoped. It's been a very busy period with these projects and other matters. And that, in brief summary, Chairman, is the paper. Is it appropriate to ask for any more questions at this time?
Thank you. The paper's quite clear. So, Councillor Woodley.
Yeah, very happy to accept it for noting. Very excited to see these sites developed, actually. One of them is in my ward, so I have to declare that, and can't wait. I guess I would only question the length of time taken, and partly my experience with other projects that we've got underway, the way costs have gone up and difficulties in kind of working with contractors. I'm trying to avoid going into the exempt papers, basically to ask how we've dealt with that, keeping those costs under within our budget, I suppose.
Those costs are currently within budget. The Portico programme is completely on time. The Belfast Road, we've had some delays due to archaeology. But at the moment, matters are still within the provisional sums and the project contingencies.
Okay, sorry, is that okay, Councillor Woodley? Yeah. I was just going to question in section 782. You set out a number of points where we're hoping to, get some value in terms of our sustainable procurement policy. But it says there, the tender, if approved, will result in these being included in the project. So just wondering what would happen if it's not approved or there's some problem at that stage, how we ensure those outcomes.
My apologies, Councillor. So a typo has been left in. You may appreciate that. Yeah, the tenders have been approved, and the 25% local labour, one framework apprentice for every 1 million of construction contract value and the support fee were part of the tender contracts.
Okay, then. So, thank you. Yeah. So sorry, I read that as though that was almost a separate negotiation, if you know what I mean. But yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions or comments? In that case, can we note the report as we're asked?
Noted.
Thank you very much for the work on that.
Thank you.
So item 11, delegated report to the group director on Buckland Street, and I believe that Bronwyn Thomas is going to introduce this. And this is for noting as well. Hello, welcome.
Yes, hello. Good evening, everyone. So my name's
We're having difficulty hearing you.
Yeah, my name's
I'm not sure why.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Do you want me to?
I can hear you now.
I'm in the
start? I
HSC,
think I can hear you now.
Okay. Shouldn't have a problem, as you can probably tell. Yeah, so I was just explaining that I will, if it's okay, Chair, I will introduce both the Buckland Street and the Wimborne Street projects. So it's item 11 and 12. My colleague Shaman Ahmed's on annual leave.
I'm all right with that. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Today. However, they have historically been, sure, okay. They are two separate projects. However, historically, they've been run in parallel because they are geographically close to each other, and the programmes have always run at the same time ever since they were designed architecturally back sort of 3 or 4 years ago. So therefore, the procurement of both sites and the same processes and programme has been followed. The two reports presented for noting this evening are very similar, and only the project-specific deed is different between the Buckland Street project and the Wimborne Street project. So if that's, I just hope that's some helpful background. Is that okay if we, if essentially I've introduced item 11 and item 12?
That's fine.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So as you said, these reports are for noting. CPIC approval was given in October 2020 for a procurement strategy for the main contractor for these housing schemes. Apologies, to just go back a moment, so the Buckland Street site is for 54 new homes on a site within the St John's estate, and the Wimborne Street project is a site within the Wenlock Barn TMO and will provide 59 new homes. Those two sites are both mixed tenure of social rent and shared ownership, providing affordable homes, plus an element of private sale homes that fund the work that we do in our team. So yeah, just to go back, so the CPIC approval was given in October 2020 for the procurement strategy, and that included at that time delegated authority to award the construction contracts. And so as such, we've then undertaken a procurement process, a contractor has been appointed, and we're now bringing the delegated power report to CPIC. And that award was actually approved by Mark Carroll, again, at a time when our directorate was actually under the Chief Executive's, within the Chief Executive's directorate, and hence Mark Carroll was the group director at that time. I know we've now moved back into climate, homes and economy. So that's why you see the historic reports just show that shifting between directorates of our team. And aside from that, I don't think there's a huge amount else to say unless you've got any questions.
Are there any questions on either of these items? Councillor Kennedy?
Could you say just a little bit more about the difference between the Hyde National Framework Partnership, Lot 6,
Yeah.
and the Southern Housing Group Framework, Lot 2? Because you clearly chose one over the other. Could you say a bit more about why?
Yeah, I can say a little bit more about why. Yes, so we at the time that the procurement strategy was being developed, a decision was made to use our framework because of the way that it sort of streamlines that procurement process. But it gives what that framework then gives you is essentially a pre-chosen list of main contractors. We then did a soft market testing exercise with both groups of contractors on those two frameworks, and the results showed that there would be more interest in our projects from the Hyde National Framework and not the Southern Framework, and therefore the Hyde Framework was chosen.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Can I, in respect to both reports, you set out sustainability and social value sections in both of them, and I think you're dealing mainly there with the sort of housing benefits of them, which are considerable, and we appreciate. But I mean, it would be quite useful to know a little bit more about what we can expect from these contracts in terms of their other sustainability policy requirements, sustainable procurement policy requirements, in terms of sort of what we might expect to the local or apprentices and delivering for green. So it'd be quite helpful if you could provide us with I won't sort of delay now, but if you could provide us with a note in respect to these contracts of what we're going to get for that. Is that all right?
That's absolutely fine. What you'd like a note after the meeting, rather than me talking
just
to the
you update us on a bit more about what we can expect to be delivered in these contracts in terms of a bit more detail on the sustainable procurement policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Yep. Okay. If that can we note that to be mentioned. So if there are no other questions or comments from members, can we then let's get this right on item 11? Can we note that?
Noted.
And 12. Can we note that? Noted. Okay.
Can I just check with you what is it any particular? I mean, we can respond. I think the items that you just mentioned, we can respond a little bit on the sustainability targets and the way that the buildings meet sustainability targets, and then we can also give you detail of apprentices and local engagement.
Look at the requirements for sustainable procurement policy. Just go through those. Tell us how you're going to meet them, basically, because it's not really in the report.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, Laurie.
Thank you.
Brian, if you could just liaise with the procurement category lead for your area, so that you can get that to members. So okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the reports. And we look forward to the schemes being built and contributing towards our target for 1,000 new homes by the end of this administration. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for all your work. Okay, so the item 13.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, item 13 now. Colville Estate, and I think, and again, this is for noting, and I think Miranda Ferrier is going to introduce this. Ferrier.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Miranda Ferrier, and I work as the project manager for the Colville Estate Regeneration Programme. And this report, as you just said, is for information and follows the approval of the Delegated Powers report in August this year, which is attached as Appendix 1, and follows the approval, and it is attached as sort of to this introductory report. The report sets out the procurement that's been undertaken to appoint the preferred contractor for what is the pre-construction services agreement for Colville Phase 2C. And this now completes the first of a two-stage procurement strategy that was approved by the July 2021 CPIC. Just in summary, the project comprises what is the second and final part of phase 2 of the Colville Regeneration Programme, Master Plan Programme, and it will provide 93 new mixed tenure homes and supports substantial improvements to the public realm on the estate as well. There will also be a new community centre and a low carbon energy centre as part of the provision in this phase. For the tender process that's been undertaken, this has been in line with the tender documentations, the criteria set out there, and the tendering contractors, 5 in total, submitted a series of qualitative and quantitative documents, and the bidders were asked to identify possible cost savings and programme optimisation opportunities as part of the submissions. And these will now be explored during the second stage of the procurement process with the preferred contractor. And bidder B, which is set out within the tender report as part of one of the exempt appendices to the report, achieved the highest score, and the tender report recommended their appointment to this first stage. Just very briefly on the second stage that we will be entering into in the procurement, the contractor will now procure 80% of the net build costs for the project on an open book basis. And there is a tendering protocol as part of the contract documents, which will ensure that competitive build costs are provided by the contractor. And this will be very closely managed and monitored by our employers agent team, and particularly the quantity surveyor within the team. At conclusion of this second stage, which will be taking approximately 6 to 8 months now, the approval will be sought to enter into the main contract in line with the CPIC approval that was made back in July 2021. So just in conclusion, the report is brought to CPIC for information following our DPR approval back in the summer. And as I say, the accompanying appendices do provide further details in relation to the procurement process undertaken. So hopefully that just gives a very brief introduction to the reports, and any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to actually dive in first here, because if I can refer to paragraph 516 about the energy centre, and you've got 2 options there, option A and option B, one with, one without. Which it's not clear which one we are proceeding with.
Sorry, just finding that in the report, beg your pardon.
Yeah, so it's about the energy centre fit out. You've got 2 options, one with it and one without it, and it wasn't clear which one you're proceeding with and what the plan is.
Okay, so we're
just
proceeding.
Clarify that point, please. Yeah.
Yes, of course, Chair. So we're proceeding with the option B, which is the shell and core only with the contractor, and that's the basis on which they're developing these second stage proposals within the procurement process. So that's the route that's been adopted.
Okay, so the question following from that is what's the plan for the energy centre now? Then is that
right? So that is now being
probably slightly off our remit there, but I think it's an obvious follow-on.
Okay, well, that now is being reviewed and procured via a separate route, which has been considered with colleagues in the energy management team, Jeremy Martin in that particular team. And so we're having further discussions with them at the moment in relation to the potential, the procurement of a specialist contractor who would actually deliver the energy centre to our shell and core that will be provided by our phase 2C contractor on Colville. So that's the route that's being investigated, and some work is being done on that at this current time.
Okay, thank you very much. Has anyone else got any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. So if we can note that report and thank the officers for that, and again, it's a big important project, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, so, okay. I'm going to move, because we've got to move into the, haven't we? Okay, so I'm going to move the, to the restricted part of the agenda. So I'm now going to move, do I have to read that out?
No, it's not necessary.
So that we exclude the press and public, we have to do that, yeah, in accordance with the terms set out there.
Right.
Okay, can we consider the exempt minutes